typical SIEGE session, usually it's a bunch of people talking at you. This one is very much hands-on. So you notice there's like paper, there's pens, there's dice. We're going to do some game design. So here's what we're going to do. How many of you have made a game before? All right. How many of you have made a game before in 10 minutes? Okay. Well, this is the last day you're going to be able to say no to that question, because we're about to make a game right now. Everyone take a sheet of paper. They're all mine. And yeah, I had trouble getting more pens than this. If you don't have any, there's a few on other tables that you can scavenge. So we are going to make a game right now. So go ahead and grab a sheet of paper. We are going to make a game that is in the genre of, if you're people who are board game historians would call these track games. Game designers would call them roll and move games. If you've ever played Candyland, Chutes and Ladders, The Game of Life, anything on the back of a cereal box, you understand what kind of game we're making here, right? So the first thing that you need is some kind of path. So you need to draw some kind of line or curve on the page. This can be straight, it can be bendy, it can form a picture, it can go, but it has to go from one place on the page to another place on the page. Draw some kind of line now.
Tyrese, our blood.
Yes, you. Oh no. Yes, all of you.
It's supposed to be all along. Just kidding, Amy.
This should not take too long. So the next thing to do is, since this is not something where we're sliding along a continuous line, it's something where we're going from one space to another, you need to take your path and divide it up into a number of discrete spaces. How many spaces? That's up to you. They could all be the same size. They could be different sizes. There could be lots of them. There could be a small number of them. You're the game designer. That's up to you. I would recommend making at least 10. You can make any number more than that.
Wow, it's way too soon for that. I'll try it the other way.
He said 10. That's definitely not 10. It's 10. He said at least. He said at least 10.
All right, so you are now halfway done.
Doing good.
Next thing we need. So next thing we need is rules of play, right? We need mechanics. We're game designers. I'll give those to you for free. This is pretty, for this type of game, it's pretty straightforward. So rules have 3 parts to them. The first is rules of setup. What happens before we start playing? In this case, one of the spaces on one end of your track is going to be marked start. Everyone choose a token to represent themselves and place it on start, and choose a player to go first. There's your setup rules. The next rules are the rules of progression of play. What happens during play itself? In this case, it would be, this is a game played in turns. On your turn, you roll a 6-sided die and move your marker that number of spaces forward. And then it becomes the next player's turn in turn order. And then the last type of rule is rules of resolution. When does the game end, and how do you determine some kind of resolution? In this case, who wins? Normally, in this case, it would be something along the lines of when a player's token moves onto the final space at the end of the path, then they win. Different games handle things differently with whether you must land by exact count, or whether you can overshoot and still have landed there, or whether overshooting sends you backwards and so you can actually end up behind where you were. That's entirely up to you. But those would be the rules of the game. So now we have rules, we have a path, we have, so at this point, you could actually sit down and play this game. Now, this is not going to be particularly interesting at this point. There's 2 things we're going to do to make it more interesting. The first thing is adding a theme. Most games have some kind of theme, some kind of story, some kind of narrative to set the context in the world and give the players some idea of what it is that they're doing, not just mechanically, but also thematically. So in this case, we are going along a path. That means you are going from one place to another place, which means you are either going towards something or you are going away from something. And so take a moment to think about what is it that you are going to. Are you trying to get to the front of a line so you can order your burrito? Are you trying to run away from a monster that's chasing you? Are you trying to get to the bank before it closes? It can be anything you want. You are the designer. Go and come up with a theme and write 1 or 2 sentences somewhere off to the side of your paper saying this is what this is about. So do that now. Might be some. You can sit at that table, or you can find there's open spots at these other tables. People at your table will catch you up.
Go get candy from house. It's Halloween.
So now we have a theme to our game. This makes it at least a little. It doesn't change how the game works, but at least it makes it a little more. Yes.
Can we slow down for a minute?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. I'll give you another minute. Another 60 seconds.
Okay.
We're not making IGF award-winning games here. You don't have to.
Oh no, it's too late.
This is going to be a
masterpiece first try.
What a damn shame. Get it right.
I'm in.
See what it takes to eat. Is this the brand new game?
To get to DC. So.
That's a good idea.
She's the new character.
Is it a she? I guess that's Trump.
Great question.
Which
Androgynous.
Oh, sure.
And the game is going to be huge.
I had that assassin.
So I know what we
And if you're winning,
Burn buckets.
How is it? It looks.
Yeah.
It looks.
In
a game of look, so sad. It's 30.
That was like my brother works at the YouTube, right? I could hit
I didn't think that's style, right? That's one of the games that just isn't good by its style.
What you think we could make that it's just something.
need a wall.
Hand-drawn animation. You can't get that.
Yeah, you do.
Watching protest cheese and talk on the tube. Like their animation looks like it's like, okay, that's why it's
Whole Skullgirls. I think Skullgirls was the first game. Go back to everyone before they did it first.
Style it.
people buy controversial.
We talked about
All right. So we now have a theme, which at least gives us something, makes it a little more interesting, even though the play of itself isn't necessarily interesting yet. Now here's the other thing: we are playing this with multiple players usually. Single player version of Get to the End would kind of be boring because you're going to get to the end regardless. What's the point? So you're competing with other players to get to the end. And so one other thing that we tend to add in multiplayer games that tends to make things more interesting is some form of interaction with other players. What does this mean? It means you can either help other players or hurt other players, one of the two, or possibly some combination of the two. So you can do this a number of ways. You can do it through the core rule set of the game. Maybe there's a certain number on your die where if you roll that number, then instead of taking a normal turn, you do something to someone else. Maybe it's something where it's conditional, where if you land exactly on someone or if you pass over someone, then something happens to them or something happens to you. Or it could be on individual spaces on the board themselves, that if you land on or pass over a certain space, then you do something to someone else, or possibly with yourself. This might be moving someone else forward, it might be moving someone else backward, it might be switching locations with someone else. It could be any number of things. So what I'd like you to do now is take a couple minutes and add up to 3 different changes. Add at least 3 changes to the rules that involve interaction between players. So, whether that be spaces, whether that be rules changes, go and do that now. So 3 rules of some kind, or 3 mechanics of some kind, that involve player-player interaction.
First, let's make it into the laundry room.
If someone rolls the 2, the game starts. That's my rule. It's Uno is the one where you take your cards. So when many cards, like, borderline is card. Pixie is already out of with a full. It's like, what you fucking won?
How was those real quick? I feel like losing interest too much, but anyway, you players do what you did.
Are there only 10 spaces?
We'll give you one more minute.
I have like.
You gotta roll low. I got chasing plays. I'm going to X. I don't know how many points for each. Losing a turn is brutal.
I know like what, like reduce sleep by
I'm
like,
doing one out of
sleep by like 3 or something.
It gives me super short.
I can make it longer. Just a couple more times. Sorry, we're basically just doing like yeah, that's exactly, it's just racing.
Yeah. It's a good thing we have to basically start and roll 6 and just one more.
Just keep playing. One more thing to just that's your next game.
So you look at them again.
Let's do it all one.
Build your own game.
Now, you like that line? Spaces.
So for those of you just joining us, just have a seat. All right, so hopefully you either have this done or almost do. So look at that. Made a complete working game in about 10 minutes or so. Right, so for those of you who have never made games before, making games is not that hard. Making games is very easy. Making good games is hard, but making games is not hard at all. And are these games going to win awards? Probably not, but it is a complete, fully functional, playable game. And if you wanted to play it, you could take some dice, take some tokens out of your pocket right now, coins, pocket lint, whatever. You could sit down, you could play this. And if you did, you would recognize that there are some parts of this game that might be fun. There are some parts of this game that might be really boring or really not fun at all. And then you could go back and modify your game, try and make it better, play it again, keep going back and forth doing this, playing the game, seeing what's wrong with it, fixing it, and then playing it again, and eventually make it into something that's worth playing. This is game design. Can I get a few volunteers to just describe to me what game did you make? So go ahead. What did you do?
I made a dungeon crawling game where the objective is to gain as many points as possible. And some squares are chance squares where if you roll the lower die of someone else, then you can go in there and lose points on your way through.
Okay. Yes.
I made a game called Hack the Planet. You hack your friends. So on a dice roll, if you roll a 1 through 3, that's how many spaces you move forward. If you roll a 6, target player skips their next turn. If you roll a 5, you take an extra turn. But if you roll a 4, you switch place with target player. These are not optional. So if you're in the lead and you roll a 4, you have to go back and put someone else in the lead.
And one more.
Sure,
Go ahead.
So my game was a mafia-based game, and there's one central crime spot where all of the players have to stop, and because they're all mafia members, they all just are bad crime gang people, and so when they originally passed by the space, there just happens to be a drive-by shooting, and being bad guys, they always have to return to the scene of the crime. So they must stop on this crime space before going forward. And at any time, if any player happens to run into another player or other rival mafia members, so they have a shootout and they have a roll-off. When one player wins, they take an extra turn, but the loser loses their next turn. And the goal is to get to the end.
So, and I could go around, having everyone, present theirs, and then we run out of time really quickly. So I'm not going to do that. But another thing to notice here is that, if I were to do that, just from the 3 that we mentioned, like I give you all exactly the same requirements. I gave you exactly the same instructions. I didn't give you a whole lot of room for creativity here, and yet we ended up with 3 very, very different games, taken in entirely different directions, right? And it is very typical of game design. Game design is not about coming up with a single brilliant high concept. It's about the thousands and thousands of micro decisions that take that concept to a final piece that could take the game in a broad variety of ways. So this is why, so many people ask me, Ian, aren't you worried about people stealing your game ideas? I'm like, no. It's like, first off, they're going to make a totally different game than I was, and hey, if someone takes my idea and makes it, then they're doing the hard part for me for free. Awesome. So another thing that so everyone took their games in entirely different ways, and you can get to lots of different places from the same starting points, no matter how constrained you are. So that brings us back to constraints. Just about every game has some kind of constraints placed on it. In the real world at game companies, you're often dealing with licenses and IP. Hey, we just got the Star Wars license. We're making a Star Wars game. Maybe you want to make a Star Trek game. Too bad for you. We often have constraints on time and money. We have to launch this game within a certain time, or we run out of money, and then we don't get to eat. There's all kinds of other constraints that can come into play here. If you're making a game just on your own, you're dealing with the constraints of what are you capable of. If there's certain things that you just do not have the expertise to do, then your games better not include those things, or you better find someone else who can join you. Right? So there's all kinds of constraints, and that's really and that's why this is called game design improv, because improvisation is really all about finding creative ways to work within constraints to make things that are interesting. So let us take some other constraints. Let's just have people shout out words. Let's say nouns. What are some things out there that you might make a game based on? Cheese.
Crackers.
That's too close to cheese. Something completely different.
Raccoon.
Raccoon.
Memes.
What? Memes. And what else? What more? Zombies. Okay, sure.
Technically.
Okay, so now what I'd like you to do, there's 3 tables and there's about, there's a little more than that. Let's break into groups of about 4 or 5, so about half of a table. The back can either form a small team or kind of pull some people away from this. And you are now founding and congratulations, so find 4 people. I would recommend people that you do not know already, because you can do this stuff with your friends all the time. But this is about meeting new people, right? So you meet some new people. This is your new indie studio, and you are going to pitch, and you are talking to publishers, and what you're finding is that games about cheese, raccoons, memes, and zombies are really hot in the market right now, and you want to make a game that has all these things in them, because then you will totally sell in the market. So here is your goal as your studio is make me a pitch, right? So make me an elevator pitch, 30 seconds or less, that's going to say, here's what this game is going to be about. Talk about genre, platforms for release, and some basic idea of what the gameplay would be. Go.
All right. You're gonna change the memes to death. Just turn it down to a verb.
And you got the memes that are they can die out very quickly.
Takes over 50 days to achieve. Yeah. Because you know they can
Goals to kill them all.
You were like a moth, I understand all the story.
The ultimate meme. The memes are actually going to kill us all.
Life is meaningless. Meaningless.
Yes.
Maybe the memes tell you where to go.
Well, no, they're
Tell you the memes are cheesy. There's so much there.
Okay. Could have a ton gun.
So we're trying to collect cheese.
Yeah, do that. I feel like that's the proper reaction. I just want like
Trying to eat your cheese.
reddish. Yeah. We're all the way back. This one says so far, this looks like a fever.
What is the worst possible game mechanics that we can fit to this idea?
Pachinko. Sorry, not Pachinko. Yeah, Pachinko actually.
He's got experience.
What did you just say?
We got an on-rail. I just spoke today.
Unreal. Cinematic.
I didn't say what you thought I said.
I think you're missing some buzzwords there.
Havoc engine.
Immersive foods.
Brown.
Immersive what?
Yes, immersive.
They're good on-rail shooters. Better than what I thought. They're good shooters.
You're right.
Making the zombies a lot.
There you go.
Very slight.
You're rocking.
It's like his power.
Maybe he's running from no, I mean, you all rock it.
Discount.
You can't afford it.
Laser raccoon.
Yeah, sure.
I think it's better than
Cheddar one. Cheddar one. You could just be a and as you play the game, you can kill enemies. You get experience. You have RPG mechanics. You can augment your body with actual cybernetic.
There's actually a game coming out soon.
Rocket, boosters, fireworks, missile.
Doesn't matter, it's buzzwords. Put it in there.
So obviously try,
Alright,
you got all
here we go. So laser. Fireworks.
It's called
Spacecraft, spaceship, torpedo, weapons. So you're running.
Any can be a RoboCat, it can be a police cat. No, it's better. Keep dark, really private dark. I mean,
Do you want me to rewrite the
just give it to like the next generation. Well, they get it's like years.
That's all I got.
God knows, this is really hard.
Alright. It's not the worst.
Wait, no, you're.
When was the last time y'all played an on-rail shooter? I got you. Last on-rail shooter y'all played?
You have to say it.
Yeah, that's what I recall. That's the best for Time Crisis games in the world.
We'll figure that out.
Terminator Salvation. You can move around, but like, you basically have to really push the robots hard.
It wasn't the first different for an on-rail shooter.
Section of Ace Combat.
Actually, that's John.
Running back.
VR is actually
You know what? We have more action that's most of what VR has.
Don't you want to avoid moving the player? Don't you want to avoid moving the player? You can shoot very stable vehicle like that
So they just snap.
Just the alternative definition of we're good. I gotta work with that. Like, it definitely helps when people hey, just get over it. Personal point?
Yeah, 1996, I would feel better.
Not one.
There's really cool Kickstarter for like the air pressure actuated glove that you can work with now. It's gonna be awesome.
And I love that, like not having any but then I also have to realize, like, I lucked out with that.
How does that happen?
No, I think it would be just
Once the VR thing, as you fly as a drone, like the first person drones, I don't know how people do that without feeling like I will be doing that.
Same way.
But people normally, like, how do you do it from the first person? Terribly sick.
No, what's the name of her game?
It's not you piloting
It's the same reason why, like, you don't you're driving a car, but you might think like you did to your right. You're not indirectly controlled to your body.
Run around like this while rotating like that. It's like I do it all the time outside of VR. It's like, this is a bad idea. Maybe just
Your inner ears like you should be swimming.
Alright. So what did we all come up with here? Let's see. Give me your 30-second pitch.
Zombie raccoons from outer space have invaded and they are trying to steal our memes. We must fend them off using cheese before they, get up all our memes.
Everyone is going to sound the exact same.
What we got here?
Alright,
go. Fighting bosses, memes of high intensity.
Speak loud.
Fighting bosses, memes of high intensity. Zombies are next. Raccoons and cheese. Why we have a chance to infect you and make you uncontrollably for a bit. Memes have random effects and attributes, breaks and parts to defeat. Raccoons have +1 attack modifier, and after defeating one, you get a chance to make them a follower. Every time you kill a cheese, you gain +1 crafted item, and then a little bit of health after killing 3. Conqueror of memes. I mean, me two things trademark. Engo. Defeat meme gaming.
What do we come up with?
Alright. What we got here? We got Shadow Blaster, the 3D first-person world puzzle game. Your character runs around avoiding the zombie raccoons while collecting puzzle pieces and running back to a puzzle board to assemble the ultimate meme. No, using only a weapon that is the Cheddar Blaster 3000 that shoots moldy rotten cheese to make sure the zombie raccoons never get you. And once you have assembled the meme, you can get a portal to the next area. Shwing!
Welcome to Night of the Living Memes. The old memes from the dank era of the internet have come back from the dead, led by the evil lolcat. And now it's up to you in your autopiloted vehicle to use the power of cheesy puns to blast them back where they belonged.
Wonderful.
The internet.
Last trash cat, zombie assault. You're being attacked by meme-crazed, lactose-intolerant zombies. Like all zombies, they want loot crates. I don't know what that means. You repel them using cheese, of course, because you are a raccoon, a living meme yourself, and the zombies are after you. This is it. You are the evil plotting raccoon. So, some features that we've thought of here. You can eat trash to regain health. You can do that if you're not a raccoon, I suppose. You want to constantly power up your cheese, so it's more effective. You combine cheeses to make more powerful blends of cheeses. And you can acquire some new cheese-powered weapons, such as sharp cheese arrows, cheese shurikens, so you can throw maybe metal cheese wheels at them, string cheese whips, of course, fiery pepper jack cheese. They're not big fans of that. And you can always call for backup with some stinky cheese. So that's our concept.
We were a conglomerate. We're a big studio.
All right. So now, in the name of mixing you all up, so your games were awesome. They sold and became major hits in the App Store. And as is standard, after a hit game, you're all laid off. Your studios are closed, and you now have to find new work. So everyone find new teams.
It's just like okay. Standard. We just better over it.
No, that guy come over.
Hello and welcome to EA Studios.
Nope.
Oh, sweet.
Let's copyright. We can't do that.
Yeah, I'll move all the way over here.
Wait, EA Studios or EA Studios? Hello, welcome, gentlemen.
Now we lose all the money because you decided
That's because you don't have enough creativity.
So you can go ahead and either make a single team with your entire table, or divide it into smaller ones. Up to you.
Thanks, Matthew.
So the last thing we're going to do today, we're going to, in the time remaining, we're going to make another playable, board or card or some kind of physical game. Try to set a land speed record for how quickly you can get this in some kind of playable state, so you can start play testing it and seeing what works. Here is your constraint. You're going to start with any major battle or military action or anything of that nature from World War II, your choice. Make a game based on it with the restriction that most war games involve either controlling territory or eliminating units, and killing people. You can't have either of those things in your game.
Can I have it off screen?
It's kind of implied by the setting, but that cannot be the objective, nor any of the mechanics could involve either killing or removing units from the game or territorial control. Go.
All right. Perfect battle.
So a military game without any military? Military game without any sort of...
$1,000 troops.
Were there battle spies?
We're not killing anybody. We
go PG.
You build the best Nazi death players.
Oh god, that part of
That's not bad.
Yeah, that's
Any major battle.
Stalingrad.
Okay, so what is our...
Yeah, Stalingrad before the Nazis show up. And then part 2, you play the Nazis while Stalingrad before the Russians show up.
one thing they should have never done. They run in the winter time.
No, you're just running away. I'm saying same material, same thing, you just flip the Okay, so it's
There's actually a large market of people that want to play this battle.
So you got a board, you got to take them all
in your trail when it gets longer.
I like your
All right. So the running game.
Everyone has to make
If we
randomly generate the terrain, you have to run over.
Everybody has to make
You can't kill people.
They catch you.
They send you to summer camp. They catch you before your team. You have to continue the game without them.
I spell soccer wrong.
It's okay.
So you're in a multiple.
Screw you.
I don't know genre.
Everyone's working together to
It's not zero sum. Everyone can play.
Sounds like a bit more than
There are no weapons. You're just armed and you're trying to solve it, right?
The Nazis did invade
So when Stalingrad happened,
The Russians did when
the Nazis basically took over Stalingrad, and immediately the Russians just took it. Like within the city.
So what's the genre?
You could say that
No, you're just Stalin.
Like basically what we did to start off with.
I'm just trying to
Like, I don't know, you have choices.
Trying to rush.
Choose.
Give up your comrades.
Yeah, give up your comrades.
They hated the Russians.
So you're saying multiple people, you're all trying to get some run to the place and get cars. You sit there, you got them all, everyone else plays?
Yeah, you kind of like a channel like the Nazis like take over part of the forest. If you're in that part of the forest, so you're trying to also keep up. It's kind of like FTL. You hang out for too long, certain like sectors, you got to it's not multiplayer, I'm just saying.
Yeah, I understand, like, as soon as you get caught, you're done, then you're done. Everyone else is
Oh, you're smack that idea. If you have the option of
And you text it.
So then it's
So it's so if you're captured, then you're pretty much like
Old arcade like.
yeah, that's not important. Board game, movement based on walking, sitting,
Oh my
the goal is to escape.
You gotta have to animate over, don't forget about that.
you have different like on one page somebody gets infected. Somebody gets infected. They can't use
So you're supposed to make it there.
Basic idea for like,
Just like real life.
yes, and take a dice roll.
You did it though.
You get the data name.
I was thinking maybe
Joysticks in different
Is it based on the tile you land on, or is it based on after everyone's taking a turn?
the side has got cross action thing.
I was thinking more space, but I mean,
Something like that.
You're going somewhere.
So in order to walk, you can actually use it, such as let's say for the building and right back part of the
At the same time you're doing that, you have to have
So these are like Monopoly. Two spaces. Community
The ones with multiple
No, this is a special soccer ball controller.
or a new area. And each pass is like a if you go this
So,
way,
and you walk in soccer, soccer.
I feel like
So in your mind, when we get to the destination, it's not even soccer.
if you run out of supply before you get to the end.
yeah, that's like
We started 4 miles away from somewhere France. We read word for word. So they have lay it on. What I've done is, did you want us on this? Hold on here. I'm playing much more.
yeah, I mean that's what I was saying. a similar kind of thing to Holocaust, where it's like, you're just going along a path you chose at first, and then it's like, oh, that was Holocaust. It's like, oh, well, now we all know what
writing your letters to your
that was a fun day to school.
Right. So you are supplanted with like prefixes and suffixes of sentences, and it's like a multiple choice thing. So you pick like a start of a sentence.
Let's talk about writer's cramp.
Alright, this is just like...
this could be a actual game you can play with two different teams.
Maybe some recordings done. I mean, how to put your band in the got to get it done on time, complete the class, without them doing the bad thing.
Yes, it is. I just changed the title to Daily Walking Soccer Simulator. Oh my God. Put it on table.
That's going to be a nice I like the way it's
Half the game is that box that's going to be that title.
That is the title.
That is. How can we make it
We're going to sell you one because that you need to finish short.
Yeah.
We're going to throw a registered trademark TM at the end.
Oh yeah, there's that one guy.
One person who couldn't get to the game. No, put TM after every word.
Dating team, walking away, soccer team, similar team, oh my dear team.
Right now.
No, it's like,
So what we got so far?
Board game, reading based on die, goals or escape. Something we can't really do. So people
at least two more slides.
It'd be like this one, we're not playing a bat necessarily, we're playing a skill game.
Ah, yes.
Five minutes remaining in this session, so if you don't have something that's playable yet, see if you can get there. Don't worry about if you figuring out every last detail. Get something that's even if you don't have all the details worked out, get something where you can actually sit down, start playing it, and figure out the rest as you go. Kind of build the plane while it's in the air.
Are you actually affect other players?
All the traps
Or some players
no, players behind you, and for some reason they can't get around it, then it happens to them not
I will have a person.
or you just drop something beneficial where you help the players out. If they pick up first. Could be like a all against one thing, one person all against another. Just trying to get as close as possible.
Yeah, I found the balance.
They get them all. You don't have that one person who's like, yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah,
That's hard
Really spaghetti. You eat your angel and he has to teach you how to walk.
The last one is Finkelstein.
Yeah.
Here's just a safe
I just don't know, like, how you can phrase that in blue books. Like, it's like, pick the most Jewish one. Parentheses, but I don't see that part. I feel like Bradley probably like, hey, it's a little heavy-handed. Maybe, like, last birthday. Just a thought.
Has to learn magic.
Take out what?
From your
tax papers for the last few years to determine that?
It was part of the game. Who has the most money?
Oh, I should be back.
My favorite.
No, you have half enough money in their pocket.
My favorite game is Turbo Tax.
So like, dead end.
I can't stand it. I only played it once.
What was that?
We have to play it again in January.
It's clean.
Worse than the other, but what's
Yeah.
That's what it is. TurboTax is 2 week taxes every year.
Presenting the same, whatever they have.
And you're playing.
The session's almost up, so.
That's awesome. Like you have a scene that's like
We could do
very,
those.
like, far away from where you're actually sitting.
One person's not here. It's an unfair advantage for the But no, it's session's supposed to be open, so
Or else you'll never leave.
Here,
Maybe that's an enter button. It's like.
I'll get everything squared. Really good line.
Oh, yes, that's
I mean, I got most of it.
So at the end of the game is a
He's have like an injury next
You don't have to deal with stuff.
You don't really have a story right now.
Away from that true love.
in a DLC.
It's a big key event.
They have a mechanism.
Wait, okay. The end of the game ends in a DLC. DLC expansion, FIFA. Which received Star World War 3. Wait.
Yeah, that's good.
That's right.
Is the Italo-Abyssian War part of World War II? Is the Italo-Abyssian War part of World War II?
I don't know.
Because the Italo-Abyssian War, there's a really easy piece of the game.
Okay.
Because Mussolini ordered the Italian
Give me 2 more minutes.
Oh, it was Mussolini in this World War II era.
Yeah. And Mussolini ordered the Italian soldiers to tear off the heads of
So if you have something to play it and see what works.
Can't play that. I didn't feel like
If you lose, you
So you're playing with heads. I rather just go back to my
day walking soccer simulator. VR experience. With roguelike. Once March to you play soccer with Troy. One of whom you're having a lot of fun and carrier pitching. Each joystick is the player must practice very bare bones. And also this is like a fight. The player has to learn pitching for the excellent.
I left Columbus for this. I left Columbus for this. Why don't
I don't care.
Switch pitches. Playing soccer with David.
You heard.
There was part of World War II, the Italo-Abyssian War. At the end of this conflict, Mussolini ordered the Italian soldiers to tear off the heads of everyone on the side of the soccer field.
They got heritage.
It's like FIFA with heads. And since the killing happened before the game started,
Alright.
they would end the game.
You have to spin the win.
And they're not going to be.
Alright. So it is now 4:30. We're now out of time. But in the past hour, you have all made 2 games and come up with a game concept. Not bad work for an hour. That's awesome. Give yourselves a round of applause. So yeah, I mean, if you wanted to be a master painter, I could lecture you all day on brushstroke technique and color theory and line drawing. But at the end of the day, you're going to get better by painting. If you want to be a writer, I can talk to you about grammar and mechanics. I can talk about literary theory. But at some point, you got to write. You are game designers. Go make games, and then make more games. Making games is easy. Making good games is experience. And eventually, if you make enough games, some of them will be truly awesome, even if by accident. So do not let fear get in your way. You are all now veterans. You have made games before. You can make games again. You will continue to make games. Keep going, keep making games, and make something awesome. Enjoy the rest of the conference, and if you had fun here, we have Advanced Design Improv on Sunday. So take a breather, take a half hour before the keynote. Thank you for coming. Oh, and I do need the dice back, unfortunately. Those do not belong to me. So.